So in divorces where there is a community business involved, it can complicate a divorce case a bit because we're not talking about two people that are W-2 employees that just get a salary. We're talking about somebody that owns a business that is generating income from that is part of the divorce case. And so generally when somebody has a community business, and community, I mean, both spouses own it because they started it during the marriage, you've got a situation here where you're probably going to have a forensic accounting to be done in the case in order to, number one, value the business because it's an asset that's going to have to be determined what the value is so that one spouse might buy out the other. The other issue is the forensic accounting is necessary to figure out something called the controllable cash flow for support purposes. That's a fancy title to just say, what's the cash flow available for child and spousal support purposes? Because not everything somebody's claiming on their taxes is deductible in a forensic accounting in a divorce case. And so there may be more money available for support purposes. So these are complicated issues that can complicate a divorce case. Usually a forensic accounting is going to take several months to do. It will definitely take a bit more time to figure out how we're going to then deal with the division of the business, any possible buyout by the active spouse in the business, as well as to determine the cash flow in order to determine appropriate amounts of child and spousal support. In order to determine a value for a community business in a divorce case, you usually need to retain a forensic accountant. A forensic accountant is going to use different accounting principles to determine what the value of the business is. They're an expert involved in the case. They're going to help work out what that value is. Sometimes people retain a joint forensic accountant that will work for both parties. Sometimes people will get their own forensic accountants because they want to feel like they have their own expert for them. Either way, an amount will ultimately be determined, and the parties can either agree to that, or if there's some dispute on how they arrived at the number, there may be some litigation involved in that. So premarital agreements are very important in that they can help protect businesses from divorce. And what I mean by that is, let's say somebody got married and before they got married, they got a premarital agreement, and under the premarital agreement, it says that their business is their sole and separate property, and anything acquired regarding the business afterwards still remains their separate property. It changes the definition of what it would be otherwise. It wouldn't be a separate property asset potentially if there was no premarital agreement. It would be a community property asset. So by having a premarital agreement, you're protecting your asset, which is a big one. You probably worked really hard for in terms of building up your business to where it is now. And a premarital agreement helps protect that from possible division with your spouse. So if you have a community business and you're going through a divorce, there may be debt involved in your business. You may have acquired some kind of debt along the way regarding acquiring certain business assets or having to borrow money for funding purposes for the business to cover payroll and so on. In a forensic accounting of that business, that's factored into what the value of the business is. The simple explanation is, let's say the forensic accountant determines that the business is valued at $1 million before the business debt isn't factored in. Well, let's say the business debt is $600,000. Well, that's going to reduce the value of the business down to $400,000, of which the other spouse would be entitled to only $200,000. So it directly affects what the value of the business is in all cases. If you have any other questions regarding business ownership and divorce, feel free to contact the Maggio Law Firm for more information.